So it's bolted down. I've got that final motor mount in. Everything's connected that way. It's in there nice and solid. I got a couple things put on it already. I hooked up my shift linkage, so that way when I do get axles in, I can throw it in park and it actually stays somewhere. I got my alternator in, got the belts on for that, and the power steering pump. Over the next, hopefully only several days, I'll go through and I'll get everything else hooked up in here that I reasonably can. I will be pulling out all of these emission lines over here, these hoses, cleaning those up, getting this whole corner kind of cleaned up. And then it's just fixing some wires. I think I mentioned those already. The harness that goes across here, I don't think has any bad wires in or mouse damage. There was one up here, the one that goes to the throttle body and all that other stuff. I got some wires to fix there because this whole area was one giant mouse nest or squirrels or whatever it was. I'm not going to hook up any of the hoses yet because I might, I don't know, I'm hoping I don't have to, but in case I have to take the heater box out to clean any of that up, just in case some critters got in there, I don't want to hook all that up and then have to just unhook it all again. And it's just a matter of putting everything back together in here. And when I do I can't start it until I obviously get all that done, but until I put axle shafts in, because the transmission is basically empty. So I got to fill that up. I fill that up, it's going to run out. I'm not putting my axle shafts in just to take them out later. So before I do that, I'm going to do struts, strut mounts, wheel bearings. I'm not going to worry about my brakes quite yet, not until after I get all that done. If there's some cold, rainy day or whatever, I might just do the brakes in the front while I'm doing all the rest of that, but we'll see how it goes. But it's kind of a little bit... Well, I mentioned a little earlier in this video about hopefully just a couple days later, I would have all the wiring rerouted and a lot of the pieces back in there. Well, it's several days later and that hasn't happened quite yet for a couple reasons, but a lot of it is I'm having a hard time routing wires. But I also found this guy in my pile of cleaned up parts. This belongs down here on this bolt, this one, and that one. So it kind of sits in there just like that. So one more thing I got to take apart. That's the joys of doing work like this. I did get my radiator cleaned up and back, and it's just kind of temporarily in there. The nuts that hold these things in nice and tight, I've got those in a solution to clean off all the rust. I got my wires over here done. They're routed because they were never messed with, so I knew exactly how those were. I took them apart, cleaned everything, put it back in, fresh in my memory. This side, not so much. It's been a while, and a lot of it was broken and pulled loose anyway, and some of it is just missing a lot of the wrapping, because that should all be wrapped up. And then there's one piece. Oh yeah, this is actually supposed to be the headlight connector, the two-prong headlight connector, the high beam. So I have to replace that, and then I got to figure out how everything goes. I kind of think I know, but this is where factory service manuals become super valuable. That, and if I would have taken a lot more pictures of everything as I was taking it apart, I would have solved my problem, and for some reason I didn't do that this time around. So, factory service manual. And of course I got my my K car, my K body, and 22 is the body code for a two-door coupe, which is what that is. So some of these, they don't exactly say where, like for instance, where all of these go. A bunch of these are pulled loose. I figured out where 3 of them go, but I have 4 of them that came loose that I took apart. So I got to figure out a little better plan where these wires are out. So, but anyway, with these pictures, and you have to kind of go back and forth and look at all kinds of them, you can start to figure out, you know, like here's this corner right here. So I know, first I thought the wires ran up above. They do not. They run in front of the computer. And then this one loops around and goes out the side. And then you kind of compare, you know, that to this picture. Okay, that one goes there. You know, and it's just a matter of you keep comparing back and forth to pictures, the diagrams, and all of these have to be fairly close. Just because it's a factory service manual, and if for some reason all this stuff has to come apart at the dealership at some point, they got to at least be able to figure out how to put it back together or if there's damage, like it gets burned or in an accident and it's destroyed. Well, they got to come up with, figure out a way somehow to get it routed in there the correct way. So, and a lot of it, and the worst of it is too, I wish they would show, and they don't, and I know why. I understand. But, you know, like there it actually shows one of the clips that bolts onto the transmission that holds the wires. I've got like 2 or 3 others that I know I took off the transmission, like the transmission pan, one of those bolts is holding it on. And I don't remember where it went, because when I cleaned up the transmission pan, the marks that had that disappeared. And again, for some reason, I didn't take good pictures of all this stuff, or if I did, they somehow got erased or deleted. So it's adding some time and effort to all this stuff, but you know, it is what it is. And of course, I've got a bolt that's missing, and I've got an extra one, and they're not the same length, which means I've got the wrong size somewhere, and I got to figure that out. I didn't think you'd get a 1-inch and a 3-inch bolt mixed up, but somehow I've got an extra 3-inch and I'm missing a 1-inch, so I don't get that. I'll figure it out. Worst case scenario, I go to a salvage yard, start taking pictures, start taking things apart, figure out what goes where. Anyway, I think that's all for now. I will continue to hack away at this thing today. Hopefully I can get all my wires in, get you know, that one fixed that's broken. If I'm lucky, cross my fingers, I'll figure out where those bolts are that are wrong, figure that out, and then get those put in the right place. And I'm getting it feels like a long ways, but in all reality, I'm fairly close to getting this thing maybe to start. I still have to do the fuel tank yet. That's going to be a job all by itself. But at least for under here, I think I'm feeling pretty good about it, I should say. Eureka, I have discovered it. So in my shop manual, I was looking around, just seeing if I can find a little better picture or something. And it wasn't in the K car section, but it is here with the G bodies, like the Daytonas and stuff. But in this picture, you can see right there, you can see the detail of the push clip that holds the wiring harness in, and there's one there. And some of these even have, you can see the actual, there's a little line there that indicates that's where it gets pushed to. So I didn't find it in the K car section, but I found it in the G body section, which is almost identical, at least underneath the hood. They're very, very, very similar. So I think I might have found, hopefully, if not all, most of my my retainer locations. How many people actually know this? Most hoses, replacement radiator hoses, are cut to fit. They're always a little bit long, or in some cases, I don't know if it'll show up, but that end is really crooked because that's just the way they're made. So, and a lot of times they'll come cut to fit because maybe they fit multiple applications, and whereas one is a little longer than the other. So this guy right here, if I put it on just the way it was and I kind of test fit it, the hose gets kinked. You know, it starts doing one of those numbers in the corners. So I'm going to cut just a little bit off this end because this is the bigger end. It's 2 sizes. I'm going to cut out first, then I'll kind of test fit it again. I think that's about how much I need for that one. Once that's done, I'll test fit it. So if you just kind of lay it on there, you'll see how much longer it is there and how much longer it is there. That's just in its natural relaxed state. So cut a little off. You know, this end obviously can get a lot more cut off. So we're gonna do a little trimming, see how it fits. All right, test fit came out successful. Like I said, you know, I cut that 1/4 inch off or so here, kind of squared it up, put it on, kind of laid it on there. Thought, I need to maybe cut off a little more than where my tape was. And that's a really good way to make sure your line is straight. Put tape on there. That way you don't wander a little bit, because cutting it off, I wandered. But I cut off a little more than where that tape was. So another, you know, not quite 1/4 inch maybe. And it lays in there really nice. And here's another tip. Either putting them on or test fitting them like this, especially like this has been freshly painted, so there's a lot of grip there. It's really grippy. Spray a little glass cleaner in there, like foaming glass cleaner, and it'll slip on nice, and there it is. And I think I'm I might take this off just so I have a little better access to things, so it's not in my way, I'm not bumping into it and stuff. Or maybe I'll just put it on because it is mostly out of the way. Either way. There we go, there's your tip of the day. Alright, so here's a little tip. This is all the tranny fluid that came out of the transmission, which is sitting right there, when I did the gaskets and everything else. And I dumped as much as I could out of the torque converter. So this is a marked bucket. I don't know, it's really hard to tell, but there's 8 quarts, 7, 6. So it's just a smidge under 5 right now is what I took out of it. Plus, you know, I lost someone. I was just taking the whole drivetrain out. So it's not an exact measurement, but it's a good place to start when it comes back, when it comes time to refilling everything, when I get everything put back together. I know I've got to put at least 5 quarts in, probably 6, right off the bat. And then once it's moving a little bit, then I will check again and top it off just exactly so. So you can't see it all, but I've got new struts, new wheel bearings, new brake hoses, new calipers. I ended up putting new tie rod ends on because the nuts stripped out a little bit, and for what I could buy new tie rod ends for, I'm not going to go look for nuts. So anyway, you can't see it all, but like I say, it's all in there. The axles that are in there, it actually goes into park now, so I don't have to use a wood block anymore. Putting some transmission fluid in the tranny right now. I took out, what was it, like 5.5 quarts I think before, so probably needs about 6 total. I'm gonna put, I got 4 in there right now. I might put a 5th in there. I'm gonna wait to top it off until it's running. I don't want it to overflow out the top because I dumped some out of the transfer case. I mean, not the transfer case, for crying out loud. The torque converter. The tranny cooler lines are all empty, so there's room for a bunch of it somewhere else. So I don't want to like just fill it up and then have it overflow out of the hole. But I'll have enough in there so when it starts, it circulates it. It doesn't pump dry or anything like that.